a visionary and architect of a distinct methodology of learning, Mr. Shomie Ranjan Das continues to make contributions that aim at promoting a unique, child-centered concept of education. An eminent educationist, Shomie Das believes in converting education into a device of empowerment that enlightens young minds. Homeschooled till the age of 11, Shomie's life at boarding school created a positive impact on him about the vocation of a teacher. He later turned his passion for teaching into his calling. After retirement, his innate passion to refine the method of teaching took shape in establishing many schools. Shomie Das's vision took root in the form of his brainchild, the Oak Ridge International School. Built upon the foundation of his 3 C's, curiosity, creativity and courage, his schooling system truly taps into the inner potential of a child. As an educational consultant, Mr. Das's philosophy has always leaned strongly towards a campaign that is 100% pro-child. His commitment towards holistic education has brought recognition to Oak Ridge International School as the topmost IB school in India.
My name is Shomie Das. I was born in 1935 and I've been in education since I was in school. I have never wavered from my love for education and I've been in it ever since. So even after I retired, I had the good fortune of meeting my friends here in Hyderabad. At that time they were in Vizag, Mr. Nagaprasad and Mr. Rajshekhar Babu. And we dreamt up this school together, and then from that little seed that was sown here, we have grown into a big company. We now have several large schools. That's my main job. I also help some other people in setting up schools. I run a few board meetings of other schools and I guide some schools. That's what I've been doing since I retired. Before that, I taught for 12 years at a school called Gordonston in Scotland, where I was the head of physics. I then came as principal of Mayo College. I was quite a young man then. I was only 33 years old when I became principal of Mayo College in Ajmer. And then I went to Lawrence School, Sana for 14 years, where I had some of the best learnings ever, running a co-ed school. And then I went to my old school, the Doon School, from where I retired at the age of 60.
Shomie is my mentor. I learned many things from him. The educational philosophy, issues about life and many more things. The entire educational insights that I share with others are either directly came from Shomie or inspired by Shomie's philosophy. First time I learned the word child-centered from Shomie. And also I learned how one can be so compassionate with others from Shomie. I was asking Shomie, if a child doesn't perform to the expected level, should we detain the child in the same class for 1 more year? Then his response was, remove the teacher instead of punishing the child. We have given 25 kids to that teacher. What did she do for the whole year? It's not the mistake of the child, it is the mistake of the teacher. That's how Shomie is child-centered.
We are so privileged to have Shomie as our mentor. But I realized that it's not only we, every student of the Oak Ridge will get the benefit of we having Shomie as a mentor, because you see every Oak Ridge campus, Shomie's DNA. He believes in excellence. Yes, we also believe in excellence, but for him, excellence doesn't mean it is relative. So you can't say that I improved from last year to this year, and you can't say that I'm doing better than my competition. So excellence means for him that we have to do the best, whatever we can do, and give it to the child. He is very, very tough boss. And he never accepts any kind of compromise on anything. Today he says something, tomorrow he has to see in the school that's happening. These 2 qualities, both non-compromising and excellence thoughts, really made Oak Ridge the best school in the country.
He is truly the man who saw tomorrow.
I think when I was in school, in boarding school, I found that the life of a teacher there was one of fun, one of a lot of excitement, one of interaction with us. And I found that that was a kind of life that suited me, even from those days. So I never really thought of being anything else but teaching, other than at one time I did think of becoming a research scientist, which I gave up the idea. And it was the schooling that I had in Dehradun which really made me think that teaching was my vocation.
Driven by his passion for teaching, Mr. Shomie Das has envisioned a school environment that places high value on the child and encourages all aspects of learning. He believes in building schools where the focus and purpose of all infrastructure is primarily on the child.
Currently, I am working as a person who builds schools. So I retired in 1996, and ever since then I've been building schools for various promoters. And it was this Oak Ridge that took my fancy, and I have been involved with Oak Ridge ever since the turn of the century, where a lot of the ideas that I have been put into practice. Child centricity can't be built into a school. It is the leadership of the school that will provide the environment for child centricity, for being child centered. The school itself will be full of brick and mortar and classrooms and wooden furniture and all sorts of things. And none of that actually gives the child any importance. What gives importance is the way the leadership looks at the child and gives the child importance in all aspects of learning, including when they are sitting in a classroom, when they are actually learning a musical instrument, or when they are going on a trek. It's the child that becomes the important being in that process.
Shomie Das believes that teaching is a transparent interaction between the student and the teacher. The personal experiences shared in the classroom and adjustment made to accommodate the mindset of a child can break the barrier between the teacher and the taught.
Excellent teacher, I'm not so sure that person exists or can exist, because teaching is very much an interaction between human beings of different kinds, different attitudes, different backgrounds, and so the teacher needs to adjust according to the situation, who he's teaching, and very often in that process he uses his personal experiences rather than some professional expertise. And so it often happens that teaching is more a personal interaction between the teacher and the student. And so excellence doesn't come in. What does come in is the effectiveness of communication. I think what is very important is for you to remember that you're also a person with your own interests, with your own passions, and those you direct towards the student so that he or she gets the same kind of passion in their lives, maybe in different areas, but the passionate feelings must go through. And that is how a good teacher will explain. I mean, if I'm say talking in terms of science, and I will talk in terms of, say, an Indian scientist like J.C. Bose, I would get involved in how J.C. Bose did this and how sensitive his instruments were. They were so sensitive that the slightest movement of the plant could be recorded and magnified in the machines that he made. And I said, you know how much thought he gave to that? And I would get involved with J.C. Bose's experiment. And I would then expect that the student will think, if he's interested, and think of another experiment to do similar things. So it transfers. What you're talking about, scientists, it transfers to the student. Now, when a teacher came to me when I was a schoolboy, and he said, Shomie, what are you doing in the holidays? And I said, well, nothing, sir. And he said, well, come with me, we'll go fishing. So here was a man who was prepared to spend a little bit of his holidays with me and taught me how to fish. Well, that was inspiring. In the nature, with rivers and fishing, that was very inspiring. In the same way, you inspire children by doing things which are enjoyable for you, but also which children will enjoy because they find it enjoyable. So inspiring children means living a life where you fulfill your own dreams through what you do and what you don't do. It inspires children.
According to Shomie Das, parents and teachers working in tandem transpires into a double benefit for the student. This collaborative effort is designed to sharpen the skill set of the child.
Very often, the two are at loggerheads. The reason being that the school has a certain way of doing things, the parents have another way of doing things. The parents sometimes leave everything to the school to do in terms of education, in terms of value education, in terms of physical education. And very often, the parents feel that not enough is being done and they tend to supplement. And sometimes these clash. But constant dialogue between parents and teachers is very important. I'll give you an example. Some parents think that it's the job of the school to teach everything and that when the child comes home, all they need to do is do homework. For some reason, parents feel homework is very important. But the child has other ideas. The child has an idea that when she comes home, she wants to relax and look at things like the Cartoon Network. And when that happens, the parent gets very frustrated and says, why is my child only looking at Cartoon Networks? And here, my answer to the parent is that, look, if the child is going to the Cartoon Networks, what does that really mean? It means that when she comes home, she prefers the Cartoon Network to being with you. So your job really is to make her feel that being with you is more important than looking at the cartoon. And that is where conversation has to start with the parent and the teacher. And many such collaborative things have to take place between parent and teacher so that it's a joint effort in bringing up the child.
Leading by example rather than preaching. Introducing the child to fair play can influence every stage of life. Truthfulness and compassion. These are Shomie's principles to bring social change that will create a ripple effect.
Where moral values, spiritual values, these are not absolute. They differ from society to society. They have relative importance in some societies in a different way to in another society. So in your school, certainly you must talk about values and you must talk about moralities and you must talk about ethics, but you cannot be too judgmental and you cannot be too absolute on it. And the important thing is for you to be able to live that life, to be able to show to children how you live, to be able to practice those with them. So for instance, just take fair play. You have to play with children on the ground and then show what fair play is. Take a thing like, the two very important absolutes are, I think in my view, is truthfulness and compassion. Now, both are possible to demonstrate in a school. And for instance, if a child has done something wrong, you ask the child to stand up and say, tell me what you actually did, tell me the truth. And if it is done in a proper manner, then the child will even be prepared to take a punishment. But if you make him frightened and terrified, it doesn't work. So morality has to be taught, ethics have to be taught more by living it than by actually preaching it. although you must have some discussion like you and I are having, but it has to be done more by living it. And I think that teachers have a very big role in that, in making sure that in all aspects, even in the classroom, if a child is unhappy, it's the duty of the child next door to find out and help that child. That's part of morality, that's part of ethics. And a teacher must always be consciously aware that these are the things that she needs to emphasize on when she's going through a class, but even outside. Making education to be socially transforming is a kind of truism, because it's education that has caused all social change. Whenever people have got ideas and they have transmitted to other people, that is education. And that's how social change takes place. And you just take the present modern century. 15 years ago, we were still picking up a phone and dialing. Today, that's gone. 15 years ago, I used to remember maybe 30 phone numbers. Today, I don't remember a single phone number, because it's all on the thing. So our methods of doing things, method of thinking is changing very, very rapidly. And we are dependent so much on our phone, which incidentally is more powerful than the computer that sent men to the moon. The phone in our pockets is 1,000,000 times more powerful than the computers that send men to the moon. Now, given that, it's going to have, given that kind of drastic changes, it's going to have a huge impact, and it has. I mean, you see in India, even a boy who looks poor has a phone in his hand, and what is he doing? He's finding out where the next lump of plastic bags are, so he can go and fetch them, and he has it on his phone. So that is the kind of empowerment that is taking place today, just due to that phone. So education causes that phone to be invented. It can't be invented without some basic education, and from that starts the social change.
Thanks to exposure to different cultures between various jobs, Shomie feels that the task of connecting with students was easier to establish.
Well, traveling has been a part of my life from a very young, early days, and I've always loved it because, of course, as you rightly say, you meet people, you meet different cultures, you have different experiences with different kinds of people, and you have different learnings. The same thing may not mean the same thing in one country as it does in another. So you learn these things. But I really learnt when I was young and I was still at university. I used to travel quite a lot. I would buy a car for say 25 pounds and drive it all around Europe for many days, and with other friends, and we would meet students of our type, and we would have long discussions on the politics, on the new kind of situation that was arising and everything like that. And then I also picked up jobs. I worked in different countries. I worked, of course, in Scotland, but I also worked in Sweden as a lumberjack. I used to fell trees and cut trees. I worked in a brewery, and I used to deliver beer to pubs. So all these things were very enriching. They taught me many things. I was in the British Army. I did a lot of work as an army officer. So I used to go to different countries and work. For instance, I worked in Sweden, I worked in Scotland, and in all these I learnt a lot about people, because you worked with people who were involved in their livelihood. I also worked in the British Army. I rose to the exalted rank of a captain, and I used to wear the Scottish kilt, which was quite interesting. Many people used to look at me and say, "Who is this new kind of Scotsman?" But it taught you a great deal about life, it taught you how to accept other people, their views, and also gave you a lot of confidence. So I spent a considerable amount of time traveling, and even today when I travel, one of the things I look at is how people are, for instance, even eating, what kind of food they eat, and all these things interest me. What kind of conversations they have, where they sit when traveling in a train, and so on. So yes, traveling has been a very important part of my life.
Shomie believes that when a child drives the learning procedure based on curiosity rather than knowledge, the purpose of education is truly served.
Well, child-centered education, what it means is that this education is centered entirely around the child, but more than anything else, it means that the child drives the learning rather than the teacher driving the learning. And there you need to be a skilled teacher, to be a facilitator rather than a person who directs. And let the child be the learner and who will create the learning environment. So a good facilitator or a good teacher who's doing child-centered learning really doesn't look at himself or herself as much as what is happening to the child and how the child is learning and what needs to be done so that she or he learns even better than she is. Well, quite frankly, I've never used flipped classrooms in my life. I've been a teacher of the conventional type. But it's an interesting concept and I am willing to try it. The concept is that don't waste time giving knowledge to the children in the classroom. Spend time with the children in doing things with that knowledge. So what happens is, in a conventional situation, you are taught in the classroom and then you're given a homework which you go and perform at home. So this is virtually the other way around, and that's why it's called a flipped classroom, where the assignments and other learnings take place inside the classroom, where as if the child is doing his homework. And the teacher has produced the classroom learning on a video which the child takes home and then listens to it and learns from it. So in that way, there are several advantages, I feel, because each child will have its own learning ability and own learning pace, and when they come back to the classroom, teacher will immediately know who has learned how much. They will also know how to handle that. So I feel that this is an experiment worth trying, although I've never myself ever used a flipped classroom.
Shomie endorses a customized curriculum that blends in a unique system of learning based on inquiry rather than textual knowledge. Experience gathered from different countries exposed him to varied teaching techniques. Shomie adapted IB as a perfect fit for Oak Ridge International School.
Well, the unfortunate thing is that the best fit in any curriculum that you're talking about, what is the best fit in a curriculum, I don't think there is any such thing. You know, I put up an international school in Indonesia, and I got a lot of inquiries from the Philippines, from Thailand, from Korea about admissions to that school. But next door was a very fine American school and a British school. So I asked the ambassador of Philippines, why were they choosing my school as opposed to all these well-known American and British schools? And they said, for one reason you're much cheaper, but for another, we like a system of learning. So I said, what's that? He said, you see, in Asia, we learn by chanting and repeating. And you do that in India. And we like that system. So people have different ways of learning. I mean, if you see boys in a madrasa, how do they learn? They learn by heart and they sway to the movement of the chants that they're doing. So different people will learn differently in different circumstances. Now, as far as curriculum is concerned, the most comprehensive curriculum that I have come across, where learning is child-centered and where learning is based on inquiry rather than on knowledge, is the IB. And if one can marry the IB to the kind of systems that we like in India, for instance, the CBSE, then I think we would be in a win-win situation. Because many people in India do not understand learning by inquiry. They do understand. Even universities don't understand. Colleges for admissions look at marks rather than what the person has in the way of capacity to learn. So I think the marriage between the two would be good, but different curriculums do have different advantages and disadvantages, but the one I have found that fits us best is the International Baccalaureate.
From an idea to concrete reality, Shomie has seen his dream translate into a knowledge hub. Ushering in the winds of change, Oak Ridge International School materialized his concept of imparting education that grooms students into confident individuals.
Oak Ridge is special for me because it was the first school where many of the thoughts I used to have was similar to the thoughts of the promoters like Rajshekhar and Nagaprasad. And so we blended well and we were able to implement those thoughts of mine into action. And so wherever I went, I always told people, go and see Oak Ridge to see how it is being done there. And it was in every single detail, even the way the classrooms are arranged, the decorations, the way we use computers in every classroom, all that became my examples that I used to use with others, which is why it became so special for me.
From his observation, Shomie lists out 4 common inborn qualities that all children possess. Curiosity, learning what they want to learn. Ability to learn from their peers. Self-esteem.
Well, the fact is that they are actually born with this. They're born with curiosity in their minds. And it is our job to try and see how to get out the best from them as far as curiosity is concerned. Now, there are 4 things that are qualities of children which teachers don't often recognize. If you want to encourage curiosity, these 4 things are very important. Of course, curiosity is one of those 4. The second thing is that children learn best when they learn what they want to learn. And so the skill of the teacher becomes directed towards making the child want to learn that topic. The third thing is that children learn extremely well with their own peers, children of their own age. They learn best when they talk to their own peers. And the fourth thing is that children have extraordinary self-esteem. And these 4 things, their curiosity, their ability to learn with their peers, their desire to learn something because they want to learn it, and their self-esteem is what teachers must use to encourage curiosity and to encourage learning amongst children. So suppose you're introducing a subject, it becomes very important that you introduce that subject on the first day in a way the children will start enjoying that subject from day 1. So you don't start saying this is social studies and we are going to learn about how things are. You start by a different approach. For instance, I'm going to teach physics. Now that's a difficult subject and I'm going to teach physics at an 11th class level. How do I introduce physics at the 11th class level? The first thing is to use their curiosity to start asking questions. And here, for instance, to give you an example, you say to them, let us do some estimation. A good scientist needs to estimate. So let us look at some estimation. How many stars do you see at night? And then you ask people for their views. How many stars do you see? And the answer is that you don't see more than 5,000 stars. But you will get people saying, oh, there's a million stars and billion stars. But actually you don't see more than 5,000 stars. So it is very important for scientists to be realistic about what they see and what they don't see. Similarly, you can say, how many eggs does a hen lay in a whole year? And start their curiosity going like that. Ask them to estimate. And that way they start getting interested in one of the great requirements of science, and that is to be able to estimate. So you don't introduce physics by saying the laws of physics are this, the first law, Newton's law is this. You start by encouraging their curiosity in estimation and other things. So that's how I would introduce a subject like science. And indeed, in any subject, if you want to introduce poetry, if you want to introduce literature, whatever you do, don't introduce it by what the book will say. Introduce it so that it encourages the curiosity of the children and it encourages their wanting to learn it.
Shomie advocates a system of learning that is not confined to academics alone. Children are encouraged to discover, pursue, and challenge their hidden potential. According to Shomie, the aim of holistic education is to polish traits of leadership and team spirit.
Holistic education, as the word implies, is educating in every possible way, and not just inside the classroom from books or what other people are telling you, but for the child to discover himself, for him to learn about values, for him to understand his own body, for him to understand his own mind. And to do that, you have to put in inputs of all kinds, including games and sports, including dance and craft and music and art and drama. And you have to also put in some things like adventure training to inculcate leadership and inculcate teamwork, inculcate courage. So all this is part of holistic education. Now, so you can't sort of go into a class and say, today we are going to do holistic education. Holistic education is what the whole school is about. It must be doing all this automatically every day, at every time of the day. And that, I think, Oak Ridge does rather well. Yeah, you know, I served all my life in a boarding school. And I know the value of boarding education as a holistic education. And I wondered whether I could find a model in which I could institute some of my boarding school ideas and facilities and systems into a day school. And this was the first and only school that has accepted that challenge. And it has put it into practice, it's put it into other schools. So we have 5 Oak Ridges now. So it is something that I feel we have created a model of holistic education which is quite unique. Well, what is actually discipline? From the very early days when I was a child, you were expected to follow certain rules. Our rules were that I had to eat everything on my plate. And if I didn't eat everything on my plate, my mother would be angry. And if that didn't help, she would even resort to a little bit of violence. It's the same today, except that you're not really going to be able to teach children through violence. Discipline is how you lead your life in a successful manner, obeying the rules of society, obeying the beliefs that you have and other people have in the world. And that can only be done if you live that kind of life, if you allow children to understand what those are. And again, as I said earlier, this holistic education helps very much in children understanding what is good discipline. When I was a kid, 80 years ago, it took 3 days to get a telephone call booked between Bombay and Calcutta. I remember that. And then if you wanted it fast, you booked what was called a lightning call. And that lightning call was so fast that it took 8 hours. So, you know, who thought that this would change in this manner in those days? Secondly, I was taught tables. And I was taught 16 times tables. Do you know why I was taught 16 times tables? Because there were 16 annas to a rupee. Now, what was that? Who knew then that 16 times tables would be obsolete today? We don't know. So I always say that a child who's 80, who's joining school today, when she is 80, it will be at the turn of this century. And at that point of time, you cannot predict what will be the state of affairs. It's just not possible. So what do you do then? You prepare the child to accept change. You prepare the child to accept whatever change. Now I'm 80, but I'm very familiar with gadgets. Why? Because I was prepared like that in my school to accept new things, to accept whatever is happening and not condemn them just because they were new, whether they were value systems, whether they were anything else. So we have to prepare the child to be change sensitive. My advice to all teachers is that every student is unique. You as a teacher not only teach them and give them knowledge, but you have to encourage them to discover themselves. You have to encourage them to know what is it that they want to do. You have to encourage them by putting in front of them all the kinds of experiences that you can, by interacting with them, by actually being with them, by playing games with them, by taking them out trekking. So you get to know these children and you help them learn the treasure within. Well, my advice to students is what the motto of this school is: learn the treasure within. All of us have something inside us which is special. What is it? Use that, learn about it, and use that to succeed in life, because that is what's going to drive you, your inner feelings. And that is why I chose as a motto of the school, learn the treasure within. And I would suggest to all students that try and discover yourself in your educational life. Try and see what is it that moves you and motivates you, and pursue that as a challenge and with as much excitement as you can.
Keeping up with the ever-changing trends in learning, Mr. Shomie Das has always been ahead of his time. He has broken down the approach towards teaching into very simple practices and principles, tailor-made curriculum that fuels cognitive thinking and child-centered instruction within the classroom. These principles shape a student to be emotionally and intellectually independent. His ideology is a manual to inspire a generation of young and eager scholars. He coined and lives the motto of Oak Ridge International School, learning the treasure within. Often referred to as the man who saw tomorrow, Shomie Das has discovered the trigger to unlocking the child's potential that broadens intellectual horizons across all areas of learning. Shomie Das truly is an educationist that students, teachers, and educators have a lot to learn from.